So we are starting to get some details out of the book Original Sin, written by CNN's Jake Tapper and Axios' Alex Thompson, about Joe Biden and his mental and physical decline while in office. So The Guardian got its hands on the book, or at least parts of the book. And there's a quote in there that I want to read, and then I want to talk about why I think it's so important. So here's the quote, and this quote comes from a senior aide who quit the White House because they did not think that Joe Biden should run for a second term. Here's the quote. "We attempted to shield him from his own staff, so many people didn't realize the extent of the decline beginning in 2023. The quote goes on to say this: "I love Joe Biden. When it comes to decency, there are few in politics like him. Still, it was a disservice to the country and to the party for his family and advisors to allow him to run again." I want to read the first part of that quote again. "We attempted to shield him from his own staff, so many people didn't realize the extent of the decline beginning in 2023. Okay, so we knew, or we suspected, we knew that the Biden team was shielding him from the public. He did very few public events. We knew that they were shielding him from the media. He did almost no interviews or press conferences of any sort. But this takes it even a further, which is that even from within the staff of the White House, Biden was being shielded by his inner circle because they knew how he looked, at least sometimes, and how bad it looked, and they didn't want word to get out. That, to me, is a remarkable thing, a remarkable admission, and I think a pretty damning quote, candidly, about this whole thing. Now, before I go any further, I want to address something that I know a lot of you will say. Who cares? Joe Biden isn't president. Kamala Harris was the nominee, not Joe Biden. And Donald Trump's president now, and look at all he's doing. And I would say, yes, but we can walk and chew gum, right? We can cover the $400 million bribe that Qatar is giving Donald Trump in the form of a plane. We can cover the grift built into the cryptocurrency stuff that his family is doing. We can cover the Supreme Court oral arguments on birthright citizenship and Donald Trump's challenge to it later this week. And we can also cover the fact that the sitting president of the United States, who was running for a second term, was being shielded purposely from even his own staff to cover up his deterioration while in office. And this, to me, it's not even just a campaign story, right? Because the campaign effectively ended for Joe Biden on June 27th during that debate, when he showed that he was not up to it, at least that night. But we've later learned from the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, George Clooney, lots of Democratic elected officials, that was far from the first time people had seen warning signs. Even people who were favorably inclined to Biden had seen warning signs about him. There was a discussion, this is from the Jake and Alex book, that Biden might need to be in a wheelchair, particularly in his second term, but they ruled out him using a wheelchair during the 2024 campaign because they knew the kind of message that would send. So there's a lot in the campaign piece of this. And, I think Biden deserves real blame for staying in as long as he did, getting out the way he did. But I don't think it's all his fault. But here's what I will say, and this is less about a campaign and more about sort of American democracy. This quote about shielding him from his own staff starting in 2023, well, he was obviously in his third year as president. What it suggests to me is that we had a guy in office for at least the last 2 years in office who his staff knew was not up to the job. At least not every day up to the job. Maybe he had good days and bad days, but not every day up to the job. And they not only knew that, but they went out of their way to keep that information from the public, the media, and his own members of his own staff, because they thought that if it got out, and they were right, if it got out, he wouldn't win again and Donald Trump would be president. Well, he didn't win again and Donald Trump is president. But I do think, look, this was a cover-up. They shielded him purposely from his staff because of his condition. I just don't know how else you conclude that this is a bad thing for American democracy. This cannot happen. We need transparency in our public officials. And by the way, that absolutely extends to the ridiculous fact that Donald Trump basically releases none of his medical history and a very sunny report about his medical checkups that basically say he has great genes. Absolutely. Good for the goose, good for the gander. But it has to be good for the goose and good for the gander. If you think Donald Trump isn't saying enough about his medical past and his medical present, then you can't look at what Joe Biden and his staff did and say it's okay. It's not okay. It is not okay. This was wrong, was and is wrong. And I think in order for Democrats to move forward, there needs to be an accounting of this. And I would say if you're a Democrat who wants to run in 2028, you need to say, look, based on what I know now, okay, you don't have to say based on what I knew then. You can say, I never saw Joe Biden in this situation. But based on what I know now, he should not have run again. And we should have known much more about his deterioration while he was in office. It was irresponsible of his staff to do what they did. Period. Full stop. All right, everyone. Again, I ask if you can do one thing for me. I ask that you hit that subscribe button. It's free. You get tons of content for free, and it helps me a ton. And as always, remember, calling balls and strikes, no matter what uniform the batter at the plate is wearing. I mean it, and I'm committed to it. Take care.